The front door of Mark and Karen's house rarely saw use. They typically entered and exited through the side door into the garage or the sliding blast doors that led out to the patio. To the right of the entry was the formal living room, which was kept spotless but rarely used. At the end of the entryway on the left, a hallway connected to 3 bedrooms, including a spacious master suite and a guest bathroom. The formal living room was perpetually dark, its heavy curtains always drawn against the back wall. A white camelback sofa sat flanked by large wingback chairs, all facing a walnut coffee table. None of this had ever mattered much before, but that morning was different. Mark was in one of those wingback chairs, facing away from the archway that led into the living room. He had spent countless hours here alone, contemplating his life and running through scenarios in his mind, trying to figure out what he would lose if he finally ended his miserable marriage. The friends they shared would choose sides, and this house would be gone. He'd be facing years of alimony payments. His net worth would vanish in an instant, along with hefty legal fees. And through it all, he'd still have to deal with Karen, who was nothing short of a vindictive nightmare. He was lost in these grim thoughts when he heard the side door open, signaling Karen's return from grocery shopping. He should have gotten up and pretended to be in their bedroom, but if she found him in the living room, it would only spark another argument. Arguments were a staple in their home, always initiated by Karen with petty criticisms, often about trivial things, or sometimes nothing at all. She did it to keep him off balance, and for her own amusement. Karen could drag out a petty argument for weeks, and Mark always found a way to placate her, just to end the conflict. To him, life was unbearable with constant friction. It was better to resolve a fight quickly, though she would usually start another one soon after. After 10 years of this, the situation felt hopeless, and he saw no way out other than death or divorce. Yet, he kept trying to improve things, mostly to preserve his own sanity rather than to make things better for Karen. He heard the freezer door close. Knowing she'd put away the frozen food, she'd soon send him out to fetch the rest of the groceries. This was typical of her, ordering around and expecting him to tolerate her criticism while he complied. He braced himself, waiting for her to call his name or worse, whistle for him. That whistle was almost unbearable these days, reminding him of a dog's call instead of her voice. He heard her light footsteps approaching the entryway. If he had looked, he would have seen her pause at the tiled floor, glancing down the hallway to ensure no one else was around. Karen thought to herself that she should have called him from the car before arriving, but talking while driving was tricky. Oh well, she was safe here. Mark was probably out back working on the gazebo, like a dutiful husband. Moments later, he heard her cell phone chirp as she dialed a number. She was now just 5 feet away from where he was. "Hi, Daddy, can you talk now?" she asked. "Daddy, why is she calling him now?" she wondered, puzzled. "We're good for Thursday afternoon. I'll call him at work after 1. He should be back from lunch by then. If he's at his desk, we'll have a few hours. I'll open the back gate, as usual, and see you around 2. There was a pause as the other person spoke. "Sure, Daddy," she said. "You can put that thing anywhere you like. You know I love your big old tool. I've got to go find out where my boy is now. See you Thursday." The flip phone snapped shut, and her footsteps headed toward the sliding blast door. She whistled and called out toward the gazebo project he'd been working on. Apparently, she hadn't heard his heavy breathing or the pounding of his heart. Mark, accustomed to tense situations from his time in the army and elsewhere, knew to stay calm. Don't panic unless directly discovered and under attack. Use the situation to your advantage and choose your own moment to act. Keep your face neutral. Control your breathing. Maintain composure. Mark stood up and walked into the den. "I'm here. I was in the bathroom. I need to run to the hardware store for gazebo parts," he said, crossing the den towards the kitchen and the side door, deliberately avoiding eye contact with her. He was surprised at how he managed to get those words out, and even more amazed that he hadn't grabbed her by the throat. Karen turned to look at him as he passed, noticing the redness in his face. "You need to wear a hat out there. You're getting sunburned. I don't want to see your skin peeling off in a few days. And by the way, there are groceries to bring in. Do that before you go, and don't be gone all day." She dropped her phone in her purse on the kitchen counter and went out the back door to inspect his work on the gazebo. Criticisms awaited him upon his return. That was typical of Karen. Almost everything she said to Mark was either an order or a veiled criticism. As she stepped into the backyard, Mark seized her phone from her purse and quickly noted the last number she had dialed. After memorizing it, he returned the phone to her purse, then brought in the groceries, put them away, and drove off in his small pickup truck. But instead of heading to the hardware store, he made a stop at a nearby park. For the first 15 minutes, Mark replayed the conversation he had overheard, trying to commit every word to memory. To be thorough, he jotted down notes. There was no mistaking it. His wife was having an affair, and it was happening right under his nose, probably in their own bed while he was at work. The thought of subsidizing her infidelity while she cheated on him made him furious. "Who was this, Daddy?" she mentioned. It couldn't be her real father, considering the area code was local and her parents lived 1,000 miles away in California. In the early days of their marriage, Karen used to call Mark Daddy during intimate moments, although she had stopped doing that long ago. He remembered it because it had seemed a bit strange at first. He thought it might be her way of signaling a desire for children, a wish for him to become a father. But she had seemed relieved when they decided not to have kids a couple of years into the marriage. She was clearly a daddy's girl, but that didn't help him now. Mark began to think about practicalities and what steps he should take next. Karen planned to let her lover into the house through the back gate on Thursday, which meant he would be walking down the alley. He could confront him there, but then what about Karen? If her lover was walking, his car would likely be parked nearby. It dawned on him that the lover might leave his car at the park. How could Mark find out who this guy was? The obvious approach would be to call the number he found on Karen's phone. He could have someone else call, posing as if by mistake, and try to get the guy to reveal his identity. A woman might be more successful at this. Who did he know who could make that call? Karen's best friend, Megan, was the first person who came to mind. If Megan didn't know about the affair, then he doubted anyone else did. Karen's sister might know, but that was unlikely, as she had been estranged from the family due to her messy divorce and was not close to Karen. Could he ask Megan for help? He had known her as long as Karen had, and Megan had always been friendly towards him. But sometimes women were more loyal to each other than to their spouses. Megan was married to Tom, who was 15 years older than her. They seemed to be the perfect couple, and he figured Megan might share almost anything with Tom. But would she share something about Karen? Mark decided to approach Tom. That meant a trip to the golf course, where Tom, semi-retired, volunteered on Saturdays as a goodwill ambassador in exchange for a free round of golf during the week. On the way over, Mark carefully planned his approach. He couldn't just come out and say it. If the news got back to Megan and eventually to Karen, it could create more problems. He needed to be subtle. "Tom, I've got a hypothetical question for you," Mark said as he rode with Tom in a golf cart, checking on the conditions at the 7th hole. "If you were to have a confidential conversation with someone, would you feel obligated to keep it confidential, or would you share it with Megan?" Tom gave him a puzzled look and drove a few yards before responding. "Are you asking if I should keep a secret from Megan? I guess I'm asking if you and Megan always share what you hear from others, even if it's meant to be confidential. It's just a hypothetical." Tom pulled over onto the grass and turned to look directly at Mark, with an expectant gaze. "Do you have a specific question for me?" "If you do, just ask," he said, maintaining the same intense look. "If I do ask a question, can you keep this conversation confidential?" "Here's what I'll promise," Tom said. "I'll never mention it unless asked, but if Megan inquires, I won't lie to her. That's how I operate. I can keep a secret, but I won't lie to my wife or to a friend." Tom's response suggested he knew something, and Mark felt an urge to reveal his question. He took a deep breath and asked, "Tom, do you know anything about an affair my wife may be having, or may be having?" Tom replied, his voice carrying a sense of finality. "Let me rephrase. Do you know anything about an affair Karen is having, or has had in the past?" The words poured out of Tom like a dam bursting. It was last New Year's at the Carlsons' party. Everyone was outside for the fireworks, and Megan had gotten sick from the champagne. She went upstairs to the bathroom, and while she was in there, she heard someone trying the doorknob. When she came out, she heard noises down the hall, where it turns towards some bedrooms. She went to check and saw Karen up against the wall with some big guy. Karen saw Megan, smiled, and gave a little wave like, "Get out of here." "Megan told me about it on the way home. We considered telling you right away, but Karen said it was a one-time thing, due to alcohol and a spat with you. She claimed it was an aggressive move from the guy, Jake Miller. Megan knows him. He's got a reputation as a bully. He married into money. His wife is a lawyer. Megan asked me to keep it quiet because we didn't want to destroy your marriage over a single incident. But I told her straight up, if you ever ask me directly, I won't lie. It's been eating me alive for the past 5 months. I'm relieved it's finally out in the open, but I'm really sorry for you, man. Karen has been lying to Megan. This isn't over. She's still seeing this guy, or maybe it's someone new by now. I overheard her talking to him on the phone just an hour ago. If I'd known, I would have come to you sooner. I'm so sorry, Mark. Let's head back to my place and see what Megan has to say. Maybe she has more information. They left the golf course in their separate cars and drove to Megan and Tom's place. When Mark broke the news to his wife, she sat down, tears streaming down her face. She had really hoped things would work out for you and Karen. She was willing to do whatever she could to help, but when she learned that the affair was still ongoing, her attitude shifted. Megan felt a sting of betrayal from Karen's actions herself. Now she had been assured the affair was over and had based her decisions, or lack thereof, on that belief. Megan, there's something you could do for me. I checked Karen's phone and got the number she called. Could you call it, pretend it's a wrong number, and try to get his name? I want to find out who she's with now. Megan worked from home as an editor with a PhD in English Lit and a background in theater. She was skilled in both acting and social engineering. Using her best acting skills and her flawless English accent, she planned the call. She dialed the number on speakerphone. Hi, this is Jake Miller, Megan blinked. Sorry, wrong number. Well, that wasn't very satisfying, she said, her entire plan falling apart, but at least the information was clear. Karen hadn't ended things with Miller. Just one more piece of the puzzle in place. They discussed their next steps. Mark was determined to catch them in the act during their next meeting on Thursday, but he wanted more evidence. He needed to have as many facts as possible to confront his wife that way. He could catch her not just in the act, but in all the lies she would surely spin to cover things up. I can't afford to hire a private investigator to follow her around, he said. I wouldn't even know where to start, and she might not even see or talk to Miller before Thursday. Plus, I'm expecting a lot of expenses with the divorce and all. I need a quick way to get the dirt on her. They sat in silence, contemplating for a minute or more. What if there was a mole? Megan suggested. What? What do you mean? What if one of her friends, say her best friend, could pry the story out of her? You do that, he replied. Never underestimate a pissed-off woman, Megan said. I'm done with Karen and the way she's treated everyone. I think I can come up with a story that will make her spill everything for the next hour. They planned. Megan would call Karen, claiming she desperately needed help. They would set up a coffee meeting for Sunday morning. Tom would modify one of Megan's old purses to hide a video camera, and Megan would place it on the table to record every word and expression. By noon on Sunday, they should have a lot more information. Megan, I need to talk to you as soon as possible. Can we meet for coffee in the morning? I'm in a tough spot, and you're the only one with the experience to help me. I trust you. What's going on, Megan? Are you sick? Is Tom okay? No, it's not that. Karen, remember the party last New Year's? I'm in a situation similar to that. Ah, I see. I might be able to help you with that. How about 10 o'clock at that new coffee place at the mall? Pick a quiet spot for us to talk. I'll see you there. Secretly, Karen was pleased. It was about time her old friend, St. stepped out of her shell. She'd been stuck with that old, boring husband for years. She could do better. Megan was still cute, and it would be fun to have someone to share stories with, just like she used to with her sister. She looked forward to helping her friend shed her outdated ideas. Eventually, she could teach Megan everything her sister, and more importantly, her father had taught her about life. Megan arrived at the coffee shop early and chose a table outside under an awning. She carefully set up her purse and tested the camera inside. She moved 2 chairs away from the table, so there was only one place for Karen to sit. She adjusted the angle and did some audio testing, ensuring there was no wind noise. The setup was simple. Just reach in and press one button to start recording. The 16 gigabytes card could hold plenty of video. Tom had cleverly secured the camera in the purse with Velcro straps, disguising the lens and microphone holes as part of the purse's pattern. She was ready when Karen showed up. Karen, could you grab us some coffee? while I hold our spot? This is the most private corner. Be right back. Megan clicked the recording button as Karen walked out of the shop with the drinks, quickly checking to make sure it was recording. They exchanged pleasantries, and then Megan launched into her story. Karen, there's this guy who wants me. I'm so confused. He's so attractive, and it's been ages since Tom and I were intimate. Tom trusts me completely, and I've never cheated on him. But now I'm really tempted. I'm asking you because I want to know how you felt after the New Year's party. Will I regret this if I go through with it? Go for it, girl. Honestly, I don't get why you haven't done this sooner. Tom's a nice guy and all, but honey, he's past his prime. You're still young and attractive. I've always admired how you look, but I've never understood why you're wasting your time with Tom. Wow, you're pretty unapologetic about this. Sounds like you've got it all figured out. Was that party really just a one-time thing, sweetheart? I won't lie to you now. I had to keep up appearances back then to prevent you from spilling the beans. But since you're in a similar situation, we can be honest with each other. In fact, we're going to have some very candid conversations. Karen, tell me everything. I'm so excited, especially since I'm thinking of doing the same myself. How did it all start with you and Jake? Are you still seeing him? You should see the look in your eyes. If you're not turned on now, I'm sure you will be soon. Okay, here's the scoop on Jake. We actually met a couple of months before that at the Carlson's Halloween party. Remember the leopard costume I wore? Jake was eyeing me from the start, and I was giving him the same look when his wife was busy handing out candy and Mark was out by the fire. Jake came up to me and whispered to meet him on the landing in 5 minutes. I just nodded. You know how packed and chaotic that party was, and the house is enormous. It was easy to slip down the dark hallway and sneak up to the landing. When I got there, Jake kissed me fiercely and led me into the bathroom, locking the door behind us. I had my leotard off in no time, and he had me sitting on his lap. Jake's enormous and takes what he wants. That's what I love about him. No pretenses, no declarations of love, just raw sex. He made me come like crazy. We did it probably 20 times between then and New Year's. We were aiming for a repeat of Halloween that night, but you were in the bathroom, so we had to move down the hallway. I would have done it in one of the bedrooms, but the Carlsons had those doors locked. So it didn't end there. You're still seeing him, aren't you? Damn right, honey. He blows my mind. In fact, I'll be with him again next week in my own bed. Wow, that's intense, but what about Mark? Don't you feel a little guilty, Megan? Mark's just a husband. You can't treat him like a lover. They serve completely different purposes. Mark's there to provide and take orders, while Jake is there for the amazing sex. I do enjoy sex with Mark sometimes, especially after a good session with Jake. Mark was a good choice for a husband because he's a reliable provider, doesn't push for kids, and is easy to control. He trusts me completely, and I can manipulate him like a remote control. I occasionally act jealous or stir up arguments to keep him off balance. Sometimes, I even pretend to sniff him for perfume when he gets home, just to throw him off and make him think I'd never cheat. When there's a movie about cheating husbands, I make a point to express how terrible I think it is and how I'd never tolerate it. Having Mark around is like having a devoted friend who just keeps coming back for more. He gets some free sex now and then, and I get all the freedom I want. I can come and go as I please, while he has to check in with me constantly. I always know where he is, so I don't have to worry about him catching me with another lover. Have you had other lovers, Meg? I don't even know if I can count them all. The first one was in our first year of marriage. He was barely legal, but he was staring at me in the supermarket, so I picked him up. He never even knew my real name. We bounced around hotel rooms for 6 months until he got too clingy. I learned to watch out for that with young guys. After him, I had a bunch of one-off flings. There was a salesman friend who liked kinky stuff, which was great because he only came to town a few times a year. I've kept Jake busy longer than almost anyone. Like I said, he's a beast, and his clueless wife is working while he's playing around. He can see me almost any time, and I'm in control of that. So, tell me about your new fling. Where did you meet him? Megan went through her prepared story about her fictional lover, Greg. The details weren't credible, but her performance was flawless. She had Karen believing every word and encouraging her to make the most of her situation. Karen, I'm amazed at how in control you are. I don't think I could handle Tom the way you handle Mark, sweetheart. In the animal kingdom, there are the dominant ones, and then there's everyone else. The top dog gives orders, and the rest follow. The drones exist to serve the queen bee. I'm the alpha in my relationship with Mark, and I wouldn't have it any other way. The alpha gets to choose her mates, and I embrace that privilege fully. Mark could have taken that top spot if he had the drive, but he just doesn't. He sometimes puts up a bit of a fight, but he can never outlast me. He despises conflict, but it doesn't bother me at all. I have more endurance and always ensure I come out on top. I'm the alpha, and you could be the same if you want. I don't see why you couldn't run the show. Tom could never replace you at his age. Just step into that role, and freedom will be yours. Plan on seeing Greg, and enjoy every minute of it. Tom will still be around, and the worse you treat him, the more he'll fall into his natural submissive role. You could probably even have Greg right in front of Tom, and he'd just accept it. That's how things work in the real world. You've always been in control. You just haven't used it yet. Point one more thing, though. Aren't you worried about STDs? Do you use condoms most of the time? I make the guy use a condom with Jake. It's different because he's so aggressive. It's like trying to put a rubber on a stallion. But he's clean. There was one time I got a bit scared because it hurt to pee afterward, but the doctor said it was just irritation from rough sex. She told me to have Mark be more careful, and I just laughed about that. There was one time I did get infected with gonorrhea. It was terrible. I had to get an injection and take pills for a couple of weeks. After that, I was more cautious. How did you keep that from Mark? That was actually pretty clever of me. You know how Mark likes to play guitar. Yeah, he's pretty good at it, whatever. Anyway, he told me he was going to jam with his buddies, and he was expecting me to say no since I never let him out alone. I just looked at him straight-faced and said, "If you really think that's what you should do." I didn't tell him yes or no. I gave him the choice, and he went to the jam. When he came back, I hit him with a running argument for 2 weeks while I took the antibiotics. If he hadn't gone, I could have turned it into an argument, and I never have to say no to sex with him because he won't initiate if we're fighting. He can't just have sex with me like a normal guy. We have to be all lovey-dovey first, or he won't make a move. After a long conversation, Megan was eager to get the recording back to Tom and Mark, so she thanked Karen profusely and headed home. When the conspirators watched the video, they were shocked. Megan and Tom barely recognized Karen, as she was much harsher on Mark than she'd been in public. Mark was stunned, but not nearly as much as the couple watching the video. He had known Karen was capable of almost anything. "Do you know anything about her, Lisa Miller?" Megan asked. She must know about her husband's cheating. I feel like I should tell her that he's with Karen, just in case she doesn't know. But if she's aware, she might warn him off and ruin our plan. I've only spoken to her a couple of times at parties. She puts on a brave face, but she seems deeply unhappy, given her husband's reputation. I'm wondering if she's totally intimidated by him. It would be risky to let her in on our plans. She might blow the whole thing, Tom added. On the other hand, if she cooperates, she might help take him down. Maybe I could work with her too. If she hears from you, she'll know you're on her radar. I could have a general conversation with her about his cheating and gauge whether she'd be supportive or not. You did a great job with the video, so I trust you to handle Lisa Miller. We need to move on this quickly, as it will affect my plans. All right, folks, thanks for your help. Once I hear back about Mrs. Miller, you're out of the loop. I won't involve you in what's coming next, and it's best if you don't know any more details, Mark said. Mark, you won't do anything rash, will you? You mean like the rash things I've been doing for the past decade? No, I mean something violent. Mark didn't respond directly. That I'm going to handle this the only way I know how. Please keep this strictly confidential. If she calls you, don't answer. Whatever happens will be out of your hands. Later that evening, Megan took a chance and called Lisa Miller. Lisa, this is Megan Carter. We've met a few times at the Carlson's parties. Hi, Megan. I remember you. What can I do for you? Lisa, can you talk privately right now? Is your husband or anyone else around? I need this conversation to stay quiet. Jake's out at the moment, and I'm just reading. What's this about? Well, it could be a legal matter, I suppose, Lisa. There's no easy way to say this, so I'll be straightforward. I'm sorry to tell you, but Jake is cheating on you, not with me, but with someone I know. I'm really sorry, but you deserve to know. There was a pause on the line, followed by sniffles and sobs. That bastard. He said it was all over a year ago. He promised he was done with all that. I took him back based on his promise and told him if he did it again, I'd leave him. Megan consoled her and moved the conversation forward. Lisa, what do you want to do about this? I know it's not really my place to ask, but I might be able to help depending on your decision. Megan, I appreciate your concern. I'll tell you this. Jake will never sleep in my bed again. I have a cast iron prenup, and I've threatened to use it if I divorce him, especially with solid proof of infidelity. He's cut off without a penny. He's useless, beyond escorting me to events and cheating without me. He'd be living in the gutter until he finds some other woman to take him in. Lisa, I can get you the evidence you need, but you have to promise me that you'll keep calm for a few days and not let on that you know something. Can you handle that? I promise I'll stay as cool as ice and won't let him have a clue until I have the evidence in my hands. Can I send someone to your office tomorrow with some preliminary evidence? They set up a meeting, and the next morning, Megan called Mark at work. He was scheduled to meet her in her office at 1 p.m. on Monday. Mark walked into her office with a video camera in hand. He introduced himself. They shook hands, and then he sat down. "Du Miller, I'm the husband of the woman your husband is sleeping with. Here's the evidence, directly from her own words." Mark set the camera on her desk, queued up to the pertinent section, and pressed play. The small screen was barely visible, but the audio was clear. When he saw the tears in her eyes, Mark walked around the desk and put a hand on her shoulder. "Do I understand how you must be feeling? This is new to me as well. I just learned about my wife's behavior, but you've known what Jake is like for a long time. Lisa, I'm planning something and want to know if you'd like to be part of it. It's going to happen regardless, so if you don't want to participate, that's okay. I just wanted to offer. Mark has intimidated me for years. I've endured it repeatedly, and I've been physically afraid of him more times than I can count. I'm done with that. I want to turn the tables. I want him to suffer now. Mark, does your plan involve violence? It might get messy. I'm not going to kill anyone, but I expect to have to deal with your cheating husband physically. Is that a problem for you? Mark, I'm 5 feet 5 inches in, and he's 6 feet 2 inches. I've never been a match for him. No offense, but I'm not sure you can take him in a fair fight. That it won't be a fair fight. I'll handle him right to the cleaners." She gave a small smile and nodded. "That's it then. Just one thing, Mark. Leave a little bit for me to handle." 2. After his meeting with Lisa Miller, Mark was in no mood for work. He was still stinging from the things Karen had said about him in the video. Unfortunately, he recognized some truth in her words, even if he saw things differently. He hated fighting with Karen, but didn't view his conciliatory nature as a weakness. It hurt that she had described him as her little gay friend. He wasn't gay, and she would see his true masculine side on Thursday. Maybe you should give her a preview before then, just to see how she would react. What if a husband who wouldn't take no for an answer made her want him more? Not that he'd ever take her back. Trust was gone, and that was the foundation of any relationship. But maybe it would give her something to think about on those long, lonely nights. Tuesday and Wednesday, Mark didn't get much work done. He spent his time going over various scenarios, knowing there were too many variables to account for. He worked out several potential outcomes, along with his preferred one. Thursday afternoon would be a game of chance. He spent a few hours in the company gym, working on his flexibility and strength. The workouts were easy to push through as he envisioned what was about to happen. Things were tense at home. They only spoke when necessary. Normally, Karen would have been on his case, but his unusual behavior had her waiting to see if it was just a phase. She needed to figure out what was wrong and get Mark back under her control. She found herself looking forward to Thursday, hoping a good session with Jake would provide some insight. Tuesday night, while Karen was in the shower, Mark rifled through his dresser drawers for something his grandfather had given him. It was a set of brass knuckles, a grim souvenir from his grandfather's time in the army. Grandpa had fought in France after Normandy and had taken the brass knuckles off a German soldier. Mark looked at them now. They were steel, not brass, and likely illegal to own. His grandfather had warned him to be careful with them, but said they might come in handy one day. That day had nearly arrived. Karen and her lover hadn't played fair, and neither would he. Mark forced himself to eat a hearty breakfast on Thursday morning. He wouldn't be having lunch, hoping his rival would. It might slow him down. Mostly, he paced his office, going over the details. He had placed a few items in the guest bedroom, depending on whether Karen waited for her lover in the backyard, or just let him in and went inside. Either way, he could adapt. He fingered the brass knuckles on his desk, pacing and stoking his controlled anger. By 1 o'clock, he had changed into jeans, a t-shirt, and a pair of sturdy running shoes. He checked his pockets: cell phone, keys, brass knuckles, wallet. Mark made sure he had everything before heading out. He called Karen from his desk phone to ensure she'd see the number and know he was actually at work. That way, she wouldn't be tempted to call him. He stayed calm and unthreatening, telling her he had meetings all afternoon and wouldn't be near his phone. He also mentioned his cell phone would be off and that he might be a bit late getting home. Karen took it as a positive sign. It seemed like he was drifting back to his usual docility. She even considered rewarding him with some makeup sex later that evening. With that in mind, she started getting ready to meet her lover. It took 20 minutes for Karen and her lover to drive to the park. When they arrived, his car wasn't there yet. Lisa dropped him off, and he jogged down the street to his house. He slipped into the backyard through the side gate, away from the garage, and hid behind a fern bush, nervously checking the time on his phone, which was muted at 1:45. Karen appeared in the backyard, wearing a string bikini. She headed to the back gate, unlocked it, and glanced down the alley, seeing nothing of interest. She closed the gate and moved to a lounge chair under the big pecan tree. This was Mark's signal. He had left the side gate slightly ajar, so he slipped through the opening and went around to the front door, using his key. He opened the door and walked over to the spot where he had discovered his wife's betrayal a few days before, in the spare bedroom. He grabbed a cordless drill and some hardware, then went to the master bedroom. Within a minute, he had installed a hasp on the inside of the door and left a lock hanging on it. He wedged a small piece of wood between the door edge and the jamb to prevent it from closing, just in case, and tried to shut it. His heart was pounding as he took the drill to the guest bedroom, grabbed the video camera, slipped the brass knuckles onto his right hand, and waited. So many things could go wrong. He could have forgotten a step. Karen could have unlocked the gate earlier and gone to the bedroom with her lover, or the lover might have arrived early. But everything went according to plan. Mark did some deep breathing to calm himself and waited for the final act, meticulously planned and executed on his own terms. He stood, peering through the slightly open guest bedroom door, with the brass knuckles on his right hand and holding the video camera. The video quality might be poor in the dark hallway, but the audio should be clear. He heard the sliding glass door open and voices. Karen was giggling, and a male voice growled. Mark could picture the big man groping her as they passed the guest bedroom. He saw that Karen's bikini top was already gone. They moved into the master bedroom, kissing and fondling, and left the door open. Mark followed them, recording every moment. At the door, he knelt and peeked inside. Jake had Karen in a bear hug, and she was working the buttons on his shirt carefully. Mark set the video camera on the dresser, just inside the door, making sure it was pointed directly at the bed. This was the hardest part, waiting for the act to be recorded. He wanted undeniable proof, desperate to release his pent-up rage. He tried to minimize his movement to avoid alerting them. For 5 minutes, the couple stroked and caressed, both now naked. They had all afternoon to indulge, but soon passion took over. Mark heard them talking, Karen calling Jake daddy, which fit with his suspicions. She definitely had daddy issues. Jake's voice came through. God, I can't wait to drill you, baby. Feels like a year, and it's only been a week. Mark peeked again and saw Jake on his knees between Karen's raised legs, lining himself up. Then Jake plunged into her, and Karen screamed in a way Mark had never heard before. They moved together, uttering curses and sounds of pleasure. Mark had seen enough. He touched the brass knuckles for luck and quietly approached the bed. Karen noticed his movement just before he shoved Jake in the ribs with all his strength, knocking him off her onto his side. "Get your dick out of my wife!" Mark shouted. Jake's shocked expression said it all. It was her husband, and he wasn't a big guy. Jake reverted to type. He was a bully, and he started moving off the bed, preparing to deal with this annoyance. Mark took a few paces back as Jake rounded the far side of the bed and approached him. Jake misinterpreted this as a retreat. Karen was now up on her knees, clutching the covers and screaming, "Get the hell out of here! Don't hurt him!" Which man was she referring to? Mark shifted his weight and took a running step, launching himself into Jake's chest, bringing the brass knuckles down hard into his solar plexus. They crashed onto the floor, Mark's full weight compressing Jake's chest. When you can't breathe, everything else becomes irrelevant. Jake tried to push Mark off, making a high-pitched whine. Panic was evident in his eyes. Mark sat up, straddling his opponent, while Jake's hands pressed on the floor, struggling for air. Mark then delivered the final blow. He raised his right hand high and slammed the steel of the brass knuckles down onto Jake's terrified face with all his force. There was no give in Jake's head to soften the blow. The crunch of breaking bones was satisfying, and blood started pouring from Jake's mangled face. The blood streaming into Jake's mouth and throat made it even harder for him to breathe. He was completely incapacitated. Mark stood up, walked toward the door, and felt a grim satisfaction at the sight of Jake's ruined face. He had been ignoring Karen's screaming, but now he heard her frantic voice. "What the hell are you doing? Are you crazy? Get back here and help him." She thought he was abandoning them, which was part of his plan, a bit of psychological warfare. He kicked the small piece of wood away from the door jamb and closed it, locking the hasp into place. He turned to face his wife. Her anger turned to panic as she realized they were locked in, and she was naked and vulnerable, with no protection from this unhinged version of her husband. Her tone shifted immediately. "Mark, oh Mark, I know it looks bad, but he forced me into this. He's a bully. He threatened to hurt me and you. He said he'd kill you to have me. I had to do it. I didn't want to." Mark's face remained expressionless as he slowly approached the bed, listening to her lies. "Shut up, you're lying. I know you've been screwing him for months." Turning his attention back to Jake, who was gurgling and turning blue, Mark felt a mix of anger and satisfaction. He didn't want Jake dead. He wanted him hurt. Mark moved Jake to his side so the blood could drain and retrieved 5 pairs of handcuffs from the top drawer of the dresser. He secured Jake's ankles and wrists to the bedstead with 4 of the cuffs, then returned to Karen. He pulled her legs off the bed, cuffed her arms behind her back, and yanked her upright. Marching her into the bathroom, he sat her on the toilet. "Don't hurt me again, Polly, please," she pleaded. "This is where you spill your guts," Mark said, rubbing the brass knuckles as he spoke, ensuring Karen saw them on his right hand. "I want the whole story. How you met him, why you slept with him, why you thought it was okay to screw me over, and I want to know about all the other guys you've been with for the last 10 years. We've got all afternoon, since you won't be spending it with that bastard after all." Karen made a strategic decision. Clearly, Mark knew something about her affairs. How much did he know? Were there details she could tweak to make her infidelity sound less heinous? Should she lie to him? Deciding to test the waters, she started slowly. "Mark, I never wanted this to happen. He's such a big guy and so aggressive. He came on to me at a party and lured me upstairs at the Holton. I didn't know he was going to, well, there was nobody around to help me," she said, mentioning Megan as a witness. "Side with me, and could tell you he had me cornered." "What party was that?" Mark asked, fishing for more details. Karen hesitated. "It must have been Megan or Tom that told you." "It was the New Year's party," she said, hoping to deflect suspicion. "Liar. You'd slept with him 20 times or more by New Year's." "Who told?" she whimpered. "You'd be surprised how many people." "Do you think Loverboy has told?" "Maybe it was one of them, but that doesn't matter." "Megan told you this," Mark said. "I'll make sure she pays for it. I know something about her that will wreck her marriage, and I'll use it." "Oh, you're talking about her new lover, right?" Karen said, her voice cracking. "Yeah, we all know about him. We made him up for your benefit. I actually came up with a name, thought about calling him Dick or Lance, got you talking, and Megan recorded the whole thing. It's copied onto a bunch of DVDs, just ready to be sent out whenever I feel like it. Your daddy, your mom, that brother you hate, they'll all get a copy." Karen cringed. "Actually, it wasn't Megan who tipped me off about what was going on. Megan didn't give me any details. She thought New Year's was your first and last time with him. Then you gave away your whole whoring history on that video. And as for who tipped me off in the first place, remember that phone call you made to Loverboy last Saturday in our entryway? You told him how much you loved his big old toe. That's right, baby, you tipped me off. You told me everything I know about your affairs. I don't need any more information. I've had my fill. Anything else you want to say, you can say to my lawyer. You'll be served papers in a couple of days." As for what's left to do, I'll need to consult with an attorney. Mark pulled out his cell phone and dialed a number. Lisa, you want to come in now and collect the garbage? He listened and chuckled before hanging up. He grabbed Karen by the shoulders and marched her back to the bedroom, showing her Jake's pathetic state. Naked, handcuffed, bleeding, and gasping for air. She nearly vomited. Mark then deposited her on the bed and shut off the video camera. He unlocked the bedroom door and opened it, and Lisa, who had been waiting outside in her car, entered the room within moments. Well, Lisa, Mark said, I saved you some of them. Well, his face isn't much to look at now, Mark said, gesturing to Jake's battered form. Here's his latest conquest, my soon-to-be ex-wife Karen. Got anything to say to her? Lisa stepped up to Karen, sitting on the bed, and slapped her hard across the left cheek, matching the red marks on her face. You stupid, stupid woman. Do you have any idea how many times I'd have traded you straight up for your man? All you had to do was ask. From what I know about him, he's nearly perfect, especially compared to the trash on the floor. What a dummy you are. Mark turned to Lisa. So, what do we do with him now? I'm thinking of just tossing him out the door without a stitch of clothing and seeing how long it takes him to find another bedmate. Get it, bedmate, Lisa chuckled. Well, I'm glad you saved his appendage for me. I've got a really sharp new hunting knife. How about we cut it off and give it to Karen? She seems to have a thing for his big old tool, and we can keep his balls in a vault to keep the women of this town safe. Mark nodded. Actually, I'm going to exercise my prenup. It'll put his balls in a real bind. He gets nothing if I catch him cheating, and boy, have we caught him. We'll take him to the hospital and tell them a heavy metal box fell on him in the garage. He won't dare challenge that story because he knows I can cut him off without a dime. If he cooperates, maybe I'll throw him a few crumbs. That leaves her to deal with, Lisa said. What do you suggest? Mark thought for a moment. The only man she really cares about is her daddy. He's her alpha dog. I'm wondering if there wasn't more to their relationship when she was growing up, though. I have no proof. If this divorce gets messy, her daddy will disinherit her like he did her sister. Losing that inheritance will ruin her life, since even half of what I have won't get her far after the divorce. I'll still have some interesting videos to share if I feel like it. Maybe that'll keep the vindictive in check. He turned to Karen. So, I'm going to let you get dressed, take your car, and find somewhere to curl up and cry. But don't even think about the ATM or credit cards. They won't work for you. You probably have a few bucks in your purse. Here's another quarter. For Mark and Lisa, they remained friends, though mostly at a distance. They'd occasionally reach out when feeling low, but had no interest in jumping into another relationship after being burned so badly. For Mark, the rough treatment of Karen was particularly painful. He had struck her twice, which he likened to the cruelty found in war, something he vowed never to subject himself to again. On the other hand, he never lost sleep over Jake's mangled face. Lisa's insurance covered Jake's basic repairs, but didn't extend to extensive reconstructive surgery. After Lisa let him go with a bit more money than the prenup required, Jake struggled to attract women, his depression worsened, and he eventually vanished from the public eye. Karen accepted a reasonable settlement and begged her sister for help, moving in with her. She's still grappling with how she could have miscalculated so badly. Nature shows about predators and prey make her ill, and terms like alpha dog or pecking order make her cringe. She often has nightmares about that night with Jake and Mark, and sometimes finds herself missing Mark, though he doesn't miss her at all.